He followed her home. He slammed the Tupperware down on the break-room table. "Do you steal from every company you clean, or just ours?" His voice echoed off the polished marble floors and glass walls, slicing through the silence of the empty office tower. The night shift had ended. Everyone else had gone home. But Maria stood frozen in place, her gloved hand still resting on the handle of the fridge. Inside it, a box of leftover lasagna, a forgotten fruit cup, and 2 half-eaten sandwiches. She didn't speak, not because she was afraid, but because her throat had closed around the words and her body refused to move. "Hello?" Nathan Hale took a step closer. His designer shoes clicked sharply against the floor. "I'm talking to you." Maria looked down at the floor, her mop bucket beside her. "I wasn't stealing," she said, her voice barely audible. "I just thought it was going to be thrown away." Nathan scoffed. "That's not your decision to make." He was in his usual crisp navy suit, shirt collar still perfectly stiff, even this late. Everything about him was controlled, sharp, precise. He stared at her like she was a stain. "This is my company," he said. "My building, my staff. You're a contractor. You don't get to decide what happens to our food." Maria's eyes darted to the security camera above the fridge, its red light blinking steadily. "I was hungry," she said softly. Nathan crossed his arms. "Then buy food, like everyone else." She looked at him then, really looked. Her eyes were dark and heavy, ringed with shadows, like she hadn't slept in days, and there was no anger in them, only sadness. The kind of sadness that settled deep into the bones and made a home there. Nathan shifted, uncomfortable. "You know what? We'll deal with this in the morning. Go home." She didn't move. "I said go." Maria slowly nodded. She put the sandwich back in the fridge, picked up her mop handle, and began pushing her cart toward the service elevator. The wheels squeaked. The silence felt like it was pressing in from all sides. Nathan watched her disappear behind the metal doors. He turned toward the break room, ready to grab his briefcase, but something made him stop. He looked back at the elevator, then at the security camera, then back at the fridge, and then, for a reason he couldn't explain, not even to himself, he followed her. The parking garage was cold and dimly lit, the sound of dripping water echoing off concrete. Maria's cleaning van was parked in the far corner where the lights barely reached. Nathan's Tesla was in its usual reserved spot by the door. He hesitated, then unlocked it and sat behind the wheel. He saw her van pull out, and he followed. At first, he told himself it was curiosity, maybe concern, maybe he just didn't like the feeling that someone was getting away with something. But as the minutes passed and they drove farther away from the city lights, he realized it wasn't about that. It was about the look in her eyes. He stayed a few cars behind, careful not to be noticed. Maria drove slowly, her van rattling over potholes. They passed gas stations, boarded up shops, an old train yard. Finally, she turned down a narrow side street lined with old buildings, some abandoned, others barely standing. She parked behind a church with a rusted metal staircase that led to a second-floor door. Nathan parked a block away and got out. He watched from the shadows. Maria stepped out of the van, opened the back doors, and pulled out a small bag of groceries. Then she disappeared up the stairs. The door creaked shut behind her. Nathan waited. He didn't know what he expected. Maybe she lived with roommates. Maybe she had a husband waiting. Maybe she was just a liar with a sad face. But something didn't sit right, so he walked closer. The building looked condemned, peeling paint, cracked windows, an old eviction notice half torn on the door below. He found a window with a ripped curtain and leaned in just enough to see inside. What he saw stopped him cold. Inside, a boy, no older than 7, lay curled on a thin mattress on the floor. An oxygen machine beside him hummed softly, connected to a mask on his face. His cheeks were sunken. His skin was pale. Next to him sat a girl, maybe 12, flipping through a worn book with torn pages. Her socks were mismatched, and her sweatshirt had a hole in the sleeve. Maria knelt beside a portable heater, unpacking the sandwich she had taken. She cut it in half and placed one half on a cracked plate for her daughter. The other half she carefully tore into smaller pieces and placed near the boy's bedside. Then she sat against the wall, closed her eyes, and breathed out, long and slow. Nathan stared, unable to move. All the anger he'd felt an hour ago drained out of him like someone had pulled a plug inside his chest. This wasn't some lazy thief abusing company property. This was a mother, barely surviving, and he had screamed at her like she was trash. He didn't know how long he stood there. Eventually, Maria got up and began cleaning. Not the way someone tidied a home, but the way someone tried to keep sickness out. She wiped every surface, checked the oxygen tube, adjusted her son's blanket. The daughter glanced up once and caught sight of something outside. Nathan ducked. His heart thudded in his chest. What the hell was he doing here? He staggered back, got into his car and drove, but her eyes stayed with him, her silence, the way she looked at the food like it was gold. By the time he reached his penthouse, his chest hurt, not physically, not medically, but something had cracked inside. He opened his fridge, full, organic, imported. He took out a bottle of wine, but his hand shook, so he put it back. Then he sat in the dark. The next morning, Nathan didn't sleep. He showed up at the office 2 hours early. HR was waiting with a file. About the cleaner, Maria Vasquez, the woman said, placing the report on his desk. She's worked with us for 5 years. Never a complaint. Until now. Nathan opened the file. Inside, employment history, ID copies, an emergency contact list. No husband listed, 2 children, one with a medical condition, severe asthma and complications from a childhood infection. Uninsured, she worked 3 jobs, lived in a building not zoned for residents. He closed the file and looked out the window. What kind of man did that to a woman like her? The answer was sitting in his own chair. That afternoon, Maria returned to clean the executive floor. She didn't look up when she saw Nathan standing there waiting. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, her voice quiet. "I won't touch anything again. I understand if you want me removed." "You're not fired," he interrupted. Maria blinked. Nathan cleared his throat. "Actually, you're getting a raise." She stared at him. He continued, "And if your son needs medical support, our company clinic might be able to help. No strings attached." Maria looked like she didn't believe him, like no one had offered her anything without a hidden price in a very long time. "Why?" she whispered. Nathan didn't answer right away. "Because I followed you, because I judged you, because I saw your life and I couldn't breathe, because you reminded me of someone I failed once." But he said none of that. He just said, "Because I was wrong." The whisper campaign. Maria showed up the next night with her head down and her steps slower than usual. Her hands trembled as she took out her supplies. Nathan Hale's words from the day before repeated in her mind. "You're not fired. You're getting a raise." But it didn't feel real, not in a life where nothing came without strings, not after years of invisible shifts and invisible pain. Still, a small part of her had dared to hope. Then she walked into the executive hallway and felt it instantly. Something had changed. The silence was no longer just nighttime stillness. It was tight, heavy, the way people used to go quiet around her in school just before laughing behind her back. She started mopping the floors outside the boardroom, trying to ignore the tension in the air. But she could feel the stares, hidden but sharp. 2 junior executives, both in neatly pressed shirts, whispered near the glass wall. "She's the one," one murmured. "CEO's pet." The other smirked. "Probably playing the sympathy card. Bet she made up the sick kid." Maria's grip on the mop tightened. She kept her head down and continued working. But now, each footstep behind her made her shoulders stiffen. Every laugh felt like it was aimed at her. Whatever Nathan had done for her, it had started something, and Not everyone was happy about it. Upstairs, Nathan was trying to fix things. He wasn't a man used to guilt. Not really. Not this kind. But Maria's life had pierced through the thick skin. Success had built around his conscience. He'd already spoken to HR again. "I want her enrolled in emergency benefits access. Fast track," he ordered. The HR director, Elena, gave him a tight smile. "We're working on it, but this kind of exception sets a precedent and people are talking." Nathan looked up sharply. "Talking?" Eleanor's voice lowered. "Some are suggesting that maybe you have a personal interest, that she's blackmailing you, or worse." Nathan stood up slowly. "She didn't ask for anything. I followed her. She didn't even know." "I believe you," Elena said carefully. "But they don't, and now legal is involved. Just be cautious." Nathan exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. He wasn't used to being questioned, especially not about motives that, for once, had nothing selfish behind them. "Who started it?" he asked. Elena hesitated. "Mark Denton," she finally said. "He's the one stirring things up. Of course, Mark Denton, director of finance, arrogant, ruthless, and always circling Nathan's seat like a vulture, waiting for a weakness." Nathan sat back down. If Mark had caught wind of Maria, it wasn't going to stop here. That night, Maria got home to a surprise. There was a white envelope taped to her door. She paused, looking around, then tore it down with shaky hands. Inside, a notice from the building owner. Eviction pending, building to be demolished in 30 days. Occupants must vacate. She sat down on the steps and pressed her hands to her face. The tears came silently, slipping down her cheeks without resistance. Her son, Nico, still needed the oxygen machine. Her daughter, Camilla, had just begun to smile again after months of silent fear. Where would they go? Her phone buzzed. It was a message from a blocked number. "Take what you got from the CEO and leave, before someone starts asking questions." Maria's blood ran cold. Who was watching her? Why now was this all connected? Meanwhile, in a glass-walled office high above the city, Mark Denton sipped a glass of whiskey and stared at the surveillance screenshot. Maria, standing by the fridge. Nathan, watching. He clicked through images. Nathan following her to the parking garage. Nathan getting into his car. GPS history pulled from the company vehicle logs. Sloppy. Mark smiled. He'd always known Nathan's shiny armor was just that. Shiny, thin, easy to dent. And now he had a crack, a whisper here, a tip there, a quiet nudge. To the board, then he'd finally have his shot. All he needed was to push Maria into the spotlight just enough that she snapped. Then Nathan would fall with her, back at Maria's apartment. She paced the floor in silence, while Camilla read quietly on the couch beside Nico, who had finally fallen asleep. She stared at the phone. Should she call Nathan? Tell him about the note? The eviction? But something stopped her. Pride. Fear. The memory of being screamed at. Of being told she had no right to take leftovers. How could a man go from that to saving her? It didn't make sense, unless he needed something from her. Her eyes narrowed. Maybe someone wanted to set her up. Maybe she was just a pawn. She slid the phone into her drawer and locked it. She'd survived worse. If they wanted a fight, she would give them one. The next morning, at Hale Enterprises, Nathan was met with an icy silence in the hallway. People stepped aside, but not respectfully, coldly. The smiles were forced. The greetings fake. Something was wrong. Then Eleanor appeared in his doorway. "You should see this," she said, holding out her tablet. On screen, an anonymous email forwarded to multiple employees. Subject line, "CEO compromised. How far will he go for the night cleaner?" Inside was a photo, grainy, zoomed in but unmistakable. Nathan leaning near Maria's window. Looking in, Nathan's stomach dropped. "Where did this come from?" he asked, already knowing the answer. "Elena," his voice was low. "We're tracking it," she said. "But it's bad. Legal wants to meet with you, the board too. Nathan sat down slowly. It had started. Later that night, Maria was cleaning the break room again when the door opened sharply behind her. She turned. It was Mark Denton. "You've caused quite a stir," he said, smiling without warmth. "Congratulations." She said nothing. "Whatever game you're playing," he continued, stepping closer, "I'd stop. You don't belong here, and Nathan Hale, he's not your savior. He's just a man with guilt and too much power." Maria stood up straight. "I'm not playing any games," she said calmly. "But maybe you are," Mark's eyes flashed. "Careful," he said. "You're disposable." He isn't. Then he walked out, but not before she noticed something. His watch. Gold. Custom. The same kind she'd seen once before. And suddenly she remembered something. The night she was robbed outside the clinic 3 months ago, someone had grabbed her purse, shoved her down, run off. She'd caught a glimpse of a gold watch as the man fled. Could it have been? No, that would be crazy, wouldn't it? Later that night, Maria took a risk. She returned to the break room once the floor was quiet and checked the fridge. Inside was another box of food, neatly labeled "Discard after 10 p.m. She knew what it meant. Nathan had left it there. Carefully. Silently, without attention, she took it home, and inside, tucked between the food containers, was a note. "They think this is about me saving you. But maybe you're here to save me." And Maria stared at the note for a long time. Maybe he wasn't the enemy after all. Someone wants her gone. The call came just before midnight. Maria was sitting beside Nico's bed, adjusting the oxygen flow, when her phone rang from the kitchen. She rushed to answer it, worried it was the hospital, but it wasn't. A calm, clipped voice on the other end said, "Hello, ma'am. This is Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about unsafe conditions in your home. We'll be sending an investigator tomorrow." Maria's breath caught. "Wait, what? What kind of report?" "I can't give details over the phone," the woman said, "but I do advise you prepare any medical documentation and living arrangements for your children. Our team will arrive at 8 a.m. The line went dead. Maria stood frozen in the center of her kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, her heart pounding like a drum in a locked box. Someone wanted her gone. Not just fired, but destroyed. She didn't sleep. She cleaned the apartment twice, scrubbing every corner. She organized medical documents, printed letters from the hospital, even arranged Nico's medications and oxygen supplies in perfect rows. Camilla woke up at 3 a.m., rubbing her eyes. "Mama? Why are you still cleaning?" Maria forced a smile. "Just making sure everything's ready for your brother's care. Go back to sleep, baby." But her hands were shaking, and her stomach twisted with a sick feeling, like something terrible was crawling closer. At Hale Enterprises the next morning, Nathan Hale stared blankly at the legal document spread across his desk. A formal review of his conduct. An emergency meeting scheduled, an anonymous complaint filed against him for undisclosed relationship with a staff member and potential misconduct. He could already guess where it came from. Mark Denton. The timing was perfect. Right when he had begun helping Maria quietly, right when he had started talking to the CFO about increasing the company's emergency support fund for low-income employees. Mark saw empathy as weakness. And now Nathan was the target. At exactly 8:03 a.m., there was a knock at Maria's door. A tall woman in a navy blue coat stood outside, holding a clipboard and wearing an expression that was neither cruel nor kind, just cold. "Ms. Alvarez?" she asked. Maria nodded. "I'm Lisa Jarrow with Child Protective Services. May I come in?" Maria let her in with trembling hands. Lisa walked through the apartment with measured steps, inspecting every room. She took notes, snapped photos. Nico was sitting on the couch with a blanket and his oxygen tubing. Camilla clutched her mother's side silently. Lisa paused at the kitchen table. "Where's their father?" she asked flatly. Maria hesitated. He passed years ago. I've raised them alone. Employment status. I clean corporate offices, night shifts. Lisa looked up, her eyes flicking around the small apartment. And who watches the children? While you work? My cousin, Anita, she stays overnight. She's here most nights. And if she doesn't show... Maria's throat dried up. Then I take the risk and bring them once or twice. Lisa said nothing for a moment, then scribbled something down. All right, thank you. We'll be in touch after reviewing your... file. Maria watched her walk out, her knees weak beneath her. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in a long time, she dropped to her knees and sobbed. Meanwhile, Nathan was making a move of his own. He stormed into legal's department unannounced and tossed the complaint papers onto their table. I want to know who sent this. One of the attorneys looked nervous. It was anonymous. I'm the CEO, Nathan cut in, and I've already traced part of the IP to an internal network. I want the name by noon. He turned and left without waiting for an answer. Back in his office, he dialed. Elena in HR. Elena, I need Maria's address. Why? I just do. There was silence. Then, Nathan, that's not going to help anything. There's already a whisper campaign, you showing up at her home again. Just give me the address, please. More silence. Then an email. Came in, subject line, for your eyes only, back at Maria's apartment. By mid-afternoon, Maria was still pacing when her cousin Anita arrived. They came? Anita asked, eyes wide. Maria nodded. Anonymous report. Anita swore under her breath. You think it was someone at the office? I don't know, Maria whispered, but I think someone's trying to scare me into quitting. Anita sat down, her expression dark. You should fight back. How? Maria asked. Anita looked over at Nico, sleeping peacefully with his oxygen mask on. You start asking questions, and you stop staying quiet. Later that evening, Nathan pulled up outside the building where Maria lived. He didn't get out at first. He just sat there staring at the cracked sidewalk, the rusted gate, the peeling paint. He couldn't believe she'd been raising 2 kids, one critically ill under these conditions while cleaning his building every night. It made him sick and angry at himself, at the system, at Mark. He finally stepped out and buzzed her unit. Maria came to the window, eyes wide. When she opened the door, she didn't speak. I heard what happened, Nathan said quietly. You mean CPS? Maria replied, Yeah, that was fun. I didn't send them, you know that, right? She nodded. I figured. Nathan glanced at the window. Can I come in? She paused, then slowly stepped aside. Inside, Nathan sat on the edge of the worn-out couch while Maria stood nearby, arms crossed. Someone's targeting you, he said. And they're using me to do it. Maria looked at him, the weight of exhaustion in her eyes. You think it's the finance guy? Mark? I know it is. Why? Nathan ran a hand through his hair. Because he wants me out. And if he can use you to make me look weak or corrupt, he will. Maria sat down across from him. So what do we do? Nathan looked at her directly. We expose him. Together. That night, Maria did something she hadn't done in years. She opened an old journal she used to keep hidden behind her pantry, one she hadn't touched since her husband died, and began writing everything. Down, names, dates, incidents at the office, the night she was mugged and the gold watch she saw. The fact that the CPS visit happened the day after Mark confronted her. The threatening text, the envelope on her door, every thread. She didn't know where it would lead, but she wasn't going to be silent anymore. In the shadows, someone was watching. Mark Denton sat in his car a block away, phone in hand, watching the glow of lights from Maria's apartment window. He dialed a number. She's still in. With him. A voice answered on the other side. Time to make her disappear permanently. The knife at the door, 3:12 a.m. The sharp crack of splintering wood shattered the silence. Maria sat bolt upright on the couch where she drifted off beside Nico, heart slamming in her chest. Camilla shrieked from the bedroom. The apartment door flew open like paper in the wind, chunks of wood still dangling from the hinges. A man in black, masked, broad-shouldered, holding a knife. For a second, Maria couldn't move, then her body kicked. Into survival mode. "Camilla, hide!" she screamed, grabbing a lamp and hurling it at the intruder. It shattered against the wall. He ducked, fast, focused, not startled at all. He wasn't here to steal. He was here for her. Maria sprinted to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife she could find. Her hands shook. Her knees barely held her weight. She positioned herself between the man and Nico's bed. "Get out of my house," she screamed. But the man didn't flinch. He advanced slowly. "This doesn't concern your kids," he said, coldly. "Stay out of the way, and I'll be done in 2 minutes." Maria's blood ran cold. "What do you want?" "Not me. The man who sent me does." His knife glinted in the dark, and that's when she saw it, on the man's wrist under the sleeve. The same gold watch she'd seen the night she was mugged outside Hale Enterprises. Her breath caught. It wasn't random. It had never been random before. The man could take another step. A piercing scream echoed behind them. "Get away from my mom!" Camilla charged from the hallway, holding a broom like a sword, swinging it wildly. The man turned just for a second. That was all Maria needed. She slammed her full weight into him, stabbing downward with her kitchen knife. The blade grazed his shoulder. He yelped and stumbled back. In the chaos, she grabbed Nico in her arms, screamed at Camilla. "Run!" They bolted down the hallway, past their terrified neighbor, Mrs. Green, and pounded on doors until someone called. The cops. 10 minutes later, the apartment was crawling with police. The intruder was gone. The officer in charge, Detective Ainsley, was sympathetic but firm. No signs of forced entry at the back. "Your front door's destroyed. No usable fingerprints." He wore gloves. Maria clutched Nico in a blanket, still trembling. "But why us?" she asked. "We have nothing." "I have nothing," the detective sighed. "I've seen this kind of thing before. Someone sending you a message." Maria knew exactly who it was, and this time she wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was going to burn the whole house of lies down. Later that morning, Nathan was waiting when she got to the corporate building. He didn't expect her to show up at all, not after what happened, but Maria stepped out of the elevator like a woman reborn. Her shoulders squared, her jaw set. She walked past the security desk without flinching, past the whispering staff who stared at her as though she didn't belong. She did. She walked straight into his office. "We need to talk," she said. He stood. "I know, I heard what happened." "I'm done being quiet, Nathan," he nodded. "Good, because I just found out who filed the CPS report." Nathan handed her a file, anonymous email chain, access logs. Mark Denton's credentials flagged multiple times, even though he wasn't in HR. The same VPN linked to both her complaint and the complaint against Nathan. Maria stared at it all, rage building like wildfire. "Is this enough to take him down?" "Not publicly," Nathan said, "but it's a start." Maria closed the folder. "No, it's an ending." That night, Maria and Nathan met in secret. Anita babysat the kids, while Maria dressed in her old uniform, the one she wore before she was noticed, before the trouble started. "I have a plan," Maria said, "but you won't like it." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." The trap was simple, risky, but perfect. Maria returned to the cleaning staff's rotation, unofficially. Nathan arranged it quietly. The idea was to lure Mark into thinking she'd backed off, that she was back in her place, that she was vulnerable again. Meanwhile, they planted a bug in Maria's cleaning cart, a hidden microphone in the mop handle, and a camera in the break room, one only Nathan and Elena from HR knew about. If Mark tried anything again, threats, bribery, blackmail, they'd have him, on record. 3 nights later, the opportunity came. Maria was alone in the executive break room, or, so it seemed. Mark walked in, pretending to check his phone. "Oh," he said, surprised. "Didn't know the help was in here." Maria kept her head down. "Just cleaning," He smirked. I heard CPS visited you. That's a shame. Poor kids. Maria didn't answer. Mark stepped closer. You know, people like you should really know their place. Things get messy when you don't. Maria turned, eyes blazing. You think I'm scared of you? Mark leaned in close. You should be. Next time, it won't be a visit. It'll be a disappearance. And that's when Nathan walked in, followed by Detective Ainsley, camera, audio, witnesses, game over. The fallout was brutal. Mark was arrested for harassment, intimidation, conspiracy, and involvement in 2 prior break-in incidents, including the masked attacker at Maria's home. The knife man was also caught days later, caught trying to use Maria's stolen ID to withdraw money from a fake charity account Mark had set up. It all unraveled at once. Nathan called an emergency board meeting, cleared his name with evidence, and announced a new employee protection policy. But that wasn't the real victory. The real win came 2 weeks later, when Maria stood on the stage. At a press conference arranged by the company, she stood beside Nathan and told her story. Not about being poor, not about being a victim, but about fighting back. I used to believe being invisible was the safest way to survive. But silence doesn't protect you. Courage does. Her words went viral. People across the country, cleaners, cooks, drivers, night shift workers, shared their own stories. The media called her the woman who cleaned the truth. The photo of Nico. The envelope was thin, plain white, no return address, no stamp. Maria found it wedged into the edge of her front door frame, not in the mailbox. It hadn't been delivered. Someone had placed it there. She tore it open with trembling hands, expecting another threat, maybe an old bill or court letter pretending to be something it wasn't. Instead, a single photo slipped out. It was Nico, his son, standing in the school playground that morning, still wearing the red hoodie she'd zipped up just hours ago. The photo had been taken from behind a fence. The words written on the back made her knees buckle. You think it's over? I'm just getting started. Her scream brought Anita running from the kitchen. What happened? Maria shoved the photo into her hands, Anita's face drained of color. Oh my God, they're watching him, Maria whispered. They're watching my child. She didn't wait. She grabbed her keys, called the school, shouted into the phone that she was coming to get her son, that he wasn't safe, that someone had taken a picture that morning. By the time she reached the school, the front office had already pulled Nico from class. He was sitting in a counselor's office, swinging his legs, confused. I was just playing, Mummy, he said. Why are you crying? Nathan met her outside the school. I already alerted security at the building, he said. They'll increase surveillance. Maria looked at him, heart racing. I'm not going back to that building. You think it's coming from someone else? Maria hesitated. I think there's something deeper, someone else involved. Mark's in custody. But this is personal. Nathan looked grim. Then we need to talk to someone who knows what Mark was really doing behind the scenes. Who? Elena, he said. She's gone silent since Mark's arrest, but she knew things, more than she let on. Later that evening, they drove to Elena's apartment. It was dark, no lights on inside. Maria knocked once, twice, no answer. They were about to leave when Maria noticed something odd. The mailbox had newspapers stuffed inside it, all from the last 5 days. She hasn't been home, Maria said. Nathan's voice dropped. Or she can't get home. They called Detective Ainsley again. Within an hour, police gained access to Elena's apartment. The living room was undisturbed, but her bedroom ransacked, drawers pulled out, laptop missing, closet empty. On the desk, Maria found a notepad with the corner torn off. Under the lamp's blacklight, they discovered something scratched faintly into the next sheet, as if someone had written something hard enough to leave an impression. Nathan read the indent. Trust no one. It goes higher. ML. Who's ML? Maria asked. Nathan stiffened. Marcus Langston. Who's that? My father, Nathan said quietly, and the chairman of the board, Marcus Langston, the man behind Hale Enterprises' empire. Nathan's father, a legend in business, a ghost in Maria's life until now. Suddenly pieces started falling into place. Mark Denton had been close to Marcus. They shared private dinners. Marcus had handpicked him. Could it be that Mark wasn't the puppet master? But the puppet, Maria's head spun. You think your own father is behind all this? She asked. Nathan looked like he wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. My father believes people like you are disposable, he said. He never liked me questioning his decisions or hiring you. Maria stared at him. You knew? No, but I suspected. Now I'm sure. That night, Maria didn't sleep. She lay awake with Nico beside her, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the level of power that had turned against her, against a cleaner, a mother. She wasn't a threat, so why had they targeted her unless she was? Not because of who she was, but because of what she knew. She grabbed her notebook, the one she'd kept since her first day at Hale. She flipped through every scribbled note, memory, weird moment, and then she found it. A name, Lotus, Fund Offshore. She remembered overhearing Mark once. He'd been arguing with someone on the phone after hours. She'd pretended to mop the floor, but she'd heard him say it twice. If the Lotus Fund leaks, we're all screwed. The next morning, Maria showed Nathan. He turned pale. That's a shell company used to route donations, but there were rumors, money laundering, offshore accounts. Mark was overseeing it, but who signed off on it? Nathan didn't. Answer, Maria pressed. Your father. Nathan nodded slowly. Elena must have found proof. That's why she vanished. That's why they're watching my son. Nathan grabbed his laptop. I have a plan. They needed access to the old server, one, that Marcus had shut down months ago when he streamlined operations. It held archived emails, financial transactions, internal memos. Nathan used his credentials to breach it. They worked all night, and just before dawn, they found it. A PDF, buried under layers of encryption. It was titled Lotus Fund Project Pilgrim.pdf. The file showed millions in charity money routed to fake organizations. Money that never reached the sick, the homeless, the orphaned. Some payments even disguised as donations made in Maria's name. They were using her identity, her poverty, as a cover. Nathan stared in disbelief. They used you, he whispered. Maria's hands trembled on the keyboard. No. They tried to erase me. Maria made a decision. She was done hiding, done playing it safe. She was going to expose everything, but she couldn't go to the police. Not yet. This was too big, too risky. If Marcus Langston was behind it, law enforcement might already be compromised. There was only one way to tell the truth. She had to go public. She called a reporter, not just any reporter. Ava Jordan, the same journalist who had covered her speech weeks ago and turned her into a symbol. I have proof, Maria told her, real proof, and I need the world to see it. Ava hesitated. This could get you killed, Maria. I'm already being hunted. They agreed to meet in a public library. Nathan gave her a flash drive. Everything's on here. Once it's out, there's no going back. Maria looked him in the eyes. Good. Because I'm not going back. As she left for the meeting, she felt the air change. She was stepping into fire, but she wasn't alone anymore. Not invisible, not powerless. A mother, a fighter, a survivor. Her son or the truth. The video froze on Nico's tear-streaked face. Maria clutched the phone, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The man in the black coat stood motionless, his face unreadable. You have 5 minutes to decide, he said. We're watching. He turned and vanished into the crowd, like a shadow evaporating in daylight. Maria's knees almost buckled. Her son, her child, her whole reason for surviving. She stood in the middle of the library steps, a flash drive burning in her fist, her future spiraling between two impossible choices. Hand over the evidence, and save Nico, or expose the truth and risk losing him. She ran straight back to the car, fumbling for her phone. Nathan. He answered on the first ring. "They have him," she choked. "They have Nico. They showed me a video. He's in a car, tied up. Nathan, they want the flash drive, or they'll—" "I've got eyes on them," he said, voice deadly calm. "Go to your apartment, I'll explain." She was already driving. When she reached home, Nathan was there, laptop open, screens tracking locations. "I installed a hidden tracker on the flash drive," he said. "If they take it, we'll know exactly where they go." Maria stared at him, confused. "But how does that help Nico?" Nathan turned the screen to her. "There's more. I traced the video feed. It was sent from a burner phone connected to a single tower, one used by a known property Marcus Langston keeps off the books." He tapped the screen again. A map popped up with a blinking red dot. "Nico is here," he said, "a warehouse 10 miles outside the city." Maria didn't hesitate. "I'm going." "I'm coming with you," Nathan replied. It was dark by the time they reached the warehouse. Maria's hands gripped the flash drive in one hand and a crowbar in the other. "Nobody comes between a mother and her child," she whispered. Nathan crouched low, checking the rear doors. There was a camera above, and motion sensors. "Wait," he said. "I'll go first." "No," Maria cut him off. "He's my son." She slipped through the side door. The air inside was stale and metallic. The sound of dripping water echoed faintly. Then a voice. "Well, you came." Marcus Langston stepped out from behind a pillar, his crisp suit glowing under the single overhead light. Behind him, Mark Denton, bruised but standing. He'd been bailed out. Maria's chest burned with rage. "Where is my son?" Marcus didn't blink. "You brought the drive?" She held it up. "Let him go first," Marcus sighed. "You don't understand the weight of what you carry, Miss Alvarez. That drive doesn't just end careers. It destroys dynasties. People like me, the people who built this world. We don't get taken down by cleaners." "I'm not just a cleaner," Maria snapped. "I'm a mother," Mark laughed coldly. "You'll never see him again if you don't hand that over right now." Maria stared at both of them. Then she tossed the drive. It clattered to the floor between them. Mark dove for it. The moment he touched it, every light in the warehouse exploded into brightness. Police floodlights, sirens, dozens of officers surrounded the building. Nathan stepped in from the shadows, holding a walkie-talkie. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy, embezzlement, and corporate fraud." 2 days earlier, Nathan had already sent a copy of the flash drive to Ava Jordan, the reporter. She hadn't met Maria that day because they planned to use the exchange as bait. They knew Marcus would strike when Maria had the most to lose, and he did. Maria ran past the chaos, shouting Nico's name. A locked door in the back. She smashed it open with the crowbar, and there he was, tied, gagged, crying, but alive. "Mama!" he sobbed. She held him so tight it felt like their bodies fused into one heartbeat. "It's over, baby, it's over." The media exploded. Headlines, investigations, lawsuits. Maria's name was everywhere, but this time as a hero. The story of a night cleaner who exposed $1 billion fraud, a mother who faced billionaires and saved her son, a woman who couldn't be broken. Mark Denton was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Marcus Langston, despite his team of lawyers, was found guilty of fraud, coercion, and racketeering. His fall made global news. Nathan Langston stepped down from his CEO role. He gave his press statement standing beside Maria. "She reminded me what power should be used for, not to dominate, but to protect." 6 months later, Maria stood at a podium in front of hundreds. She wore a fitted navy dress, her hair pulled back, eyes glowing. Behind her, a banner, the Maria Foundation, restoring dignity to the invisible. She was now the director of a global non-profit that helped domestic workers, immigrants, and single mothers reclaim their voices and rights. She looked into the cameras and said, "They tried to erase me. They used my silence as protection, but I turned that silence into thunder. I am no longer invisible, and I never will be again. The crowd stood, clapping through tears. Nico stood in the front row, proud. Nathan beside him, not as a savior, but as someone who finally saw her. Final words, emotional lesson. Sometimes the world only sees what you're not, but when you stand in truth, when you risk it all for love, you become unstoppable. Not because you're powerful, but because you are finally free.